Hello, everyone. This is Eric Rudder from Sports Illustrated's Wolverine Digest, and today I'm joined by the Sklar brothers, Randy and Jason Sklar. Thanks, fellas. How are you guys doing today?
We're good.
I'm great. It's good to talk
Yeah,
to you. It's good to know. It's good to know that that Michigan football is basically 2 weeks away. That's getting me through this fall.
We're knocking on the door right now. We're so close. We're at the 1 yard line, right?
yes, we are. It feels. I'm really excited. I saw some like promos on FS1 about the Big Ten, and I just was like, oh my God, I can't wait for these games to start.
Having football again is like the one thing of normalcy that can be restored in the crazy year that we've had.
Well, yeah, and it also it's not just what I realized is that it's not just the games themselves on the days that they're being played, but the season becomes a storyline that you can follow that immediately gobbles up like 3 months of time. So if you think of the season as a unit, as a whole, we think, okay, we start off in Minnesota. Obviously, that's going to be a tough road challenge. But if we get that win, now maybe, you start to look ahead 3 or 4 weeks. And then before you know it, you've gobbled up 3 or 4 more weeks of, what we're dealing with right now, which is isolation. And hopefully we're 3 weeks closer, 3 months closer to a vaccine, closer to perhaps, maybe starting to head back to normal life.
That's a really good way to look at it. And I like your optimism about the whole situation, and especially as it pertains to squeaking out a road win at Minnesota week 1.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, I think, part of the difficulty of life on the road, I think for a lot of people is they get into their heads, and that's just because of extreme crowd noise, the difficulty of being in a different stadium, the pressure just doubles. And so I think a little of that pressure is going to be off. And that works both in our favor and against us because we have two. I mean, I know you want to talk about the current season more towards the end, but we have two big home games that are against rival teams where we oftentimes, we've taken that advantage against Wisconsin, against Penn State in the last several years. And it's like we're going to lose a little of that edge. But really, I still think that affects us less because we're going to feel comfortable we're at home. I think where it helps us are in games like on the road in Minnesota beginning of the year. And I'm going to say at the Horseshoe, even if they have 10,000 fans, it just will feel different.
It certainly is a big equalizer, and teams with massive home field advantages might not have that same degree of comfortableness when they're playing on Saturday.
absolutely. And so, then it becomes about coaching, and it becomes about what you can get out of your kids and how are they playing. And I mean, there's a lot to be excited about with this team, but we can get into that later. So we're here, whatever you want from us.
Speaking about all the things to be excited about, I can imagine now you guys grew up in St. Louis, Missouri. So I'm curious about how you made your way to Ann Arbor and what drew you to the university. So what kind of got you guys excited about Michigan as a whole?
So we grew up in St. Louis, and we kind of grew up University of Missouri fans. St. Louis University basketball had a kid named Anthony Bonner who was like a great player. So we had some teams that we followed locally, but we kind of became with Harbaugh and Bo Schembechler and those sort of mid 80s teams. We did become fans of Michigan. And then a really close family friend went to school there, and we went up and visited Michigan with our cousin who was looking at it too. She was a year ahead of us and only 4 months older than us. She lives out in Los Angeles and is very close to the two of us, our first cousin, our mom's brother's daughter. And so we went with her to visit the school. She was looking at it, and our family friend was up there, and we just had the best time. It was literally, it felt like home the very first time we went. And we weren't even looking at it for ourselves. But then our cousin got in. Then we went and visited when we were seniors in high school, and we thought, this is the best school. We only applied to 3 schools, Jay and I. We applied to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Penn. That was it. We're like, we're covered. We did take a shot at an Ivy League school. Michigan has the great academics and the great sports and the great campus and everything. And if we don't get into Michigan, maybe we can get into Wisconsin, and we'd be happy going there. We wound up getting into all 3 miraculously. And we had a choice. We're like, what are we going to do here? Are we going to choose to go to an Ivy League school in a city in Philadelphia that certainly doesn't have a tremendous football team? They've got a decent basketball team that occasionally makes the tournament, but sports were important to us. And just the feeling we got from the Michigan campus, the fact that it was kind of close to home, St. Louis, I mean, this is going to sound so stupid and crazy, but at the time, Jay, who was it? Northwest Airlines?
Southwest Airlines.
Southwest Airlines was offering like a $17 flight. $19 flight from this. So $37 is what it wound up being in the end. $38 from St. Louis to Detroit. And we said to our parents, it's less than $40 for us to fly round trip to and from. This is close enough. And they were happy. And of course, we were happy to be there with our cousins.
Yeah, and I think the feeling that we got from so many people across the Michigan campus was how much they loved the rituals that surrounded all the things at Michigan, namely sports. So, to understand that like men and women were both so excited about the Michigan games, and people across from wherever they came from, they just were like wearing the Michigan colors and so proud to be part of that school. And while at the same time having like really intense academics, and it seemed like had the academics and the high level of learning that you get in an Ivy League school without the pretension, mixed in with this energy towards sports and the things that we were drawn to. So we were like, oh man, when we got into Michigan early. It was rolling admission. So we found out by like October, I think, or maybe it was even beginning of November. And we were like, oh my God, during the Michigan football season. So we found out in the year that they won the Rose Bowl, I think it was 89-90, right?
Yeah.
So that was the year that they had won the national championship the previous spring. And then the year that they, in basketball, and then they won the Rose Bowl that year. And it just was a prime time for Michigan. And then when we went to Michigan, we saw a Heisman Trophy with Desmond Howard, and we were in the student section for the catch against Notre Dame.
Wow, so you made a perfect segue right there, because I was going to say, given that timeline, when you guys were both in Ann Arbor at Michigan, with as much history and legacy as follows the program, you had an opportunity to see some of the most memorable athletic moments that have ever happened at the school.
So I remember, I remember the basketball team our freshman year was average. They were okay, not great. And then our sophomore year, in came the Fab Five. And I mean, they changed the seating at Chrysler Arena our sophomore year. It was, seniors down on the floor behind the basket, juniors right above them, sophomores up above them in the top section, and then freshmen were around the upper bowl. So they were nowhere near the court. And you had assigned seats. And then as soon as the Fab Five came, Michigan, the athletic department realized they had something special. And if you bought a season ticket pass for basketball, you got a credit card that just a little card that said you have season tickets. And it was first come, first serve. And I will never forget, in December, it was before conference play. We had a huge showdown with the team that became the national champions that year, the Duke Blue Devils, Christian Laettner, Grant Hill, Thomas Hill, Bobby Hurley, Cherokee Parks. They came to Ann Arbor, and we camped out to get good seats for that game. And it was 20 degrees below zero. The wind was blowing so strong around Chrysler that we were in a tent, but it was moving around. So someone had to go back to their house and get free weights and put them in the tent. I mean, I don't know how we survived that night. And then we got in the next morning at 9 a.m. The game was at noon, and they let everyone in because they felt bad with how cold it was. So we were in Chrysler about 2 hours early for shoot around. The crowd, the energy was incredible. Michigan ultimately lost the game, but they were down by like 17 or 18 and came back and tied it and took it to overtime. And Weber was insane.
Weber almost hit the three-quarter shot to win the game at the buzzer. It was, the energy and excitement was amazing. And in those moments, we're like, oh, this is why we came to Michigan. Same, Jason mentioned the catch too. Like when Desmond Howard laid out for that catch and kind of in the same end zone in front of the student section, we all just fell about each other in a way that was like, there was just such camaraderie amongst the students and all the fans, and we just knew we were seeing something incredible. And then we saw Desmond run back the touchdown against Ohio State and make the pose. We were at that game, and it was just tremendous to be a part of the athletics at that time. And I'll even throw hockey in there. We had amazing hockey teams with Steve Shields and Brian Wiseman and Denny Felsner and Cam Stewart. All these kids were really good. And we had a lot of classes with these guys too. So they were our classmates as well.
That's an extreme amount of dedication to camp outside of Chrysler for so long to get a seat there. And I imagine with the Fab Five, there is so much hype surrounding them coming into college. Was there a moment where you finally realized that, like, wow, this team is really, they're for real. There's a chance they can do something special here at Michigan?
It was that Duke game. It was that Duke game where we saw them all there playing, and we thought, oh my God, they're so fun. Because the entire game, the fans just wanted all five of them to be on the court at the same time. And then when Fisher put them all in, we were like, oh my God, we're looking at what this could be. And then when they made the run in the tournament, and they had like 2 amazing years of runs and tournaments to make it to the national championship game.
Three. They made it to the Elite Eight the third year.
Third year, that's right. It was so special. You were so excited that you had this type of athletics going on while we were at school there. We knew we had something really special.
And they were having fun. That was the other part of it that felt different. And like, you could just see when you're in the building and you're watching them up close, like we could see how much fun they were having playing, and it was infectious. Like those games and that time, especially because leading up to that time, Michigan, obviously there was the national championship year, but teams like Michigan State and Indiana, even though they beat us in those years, the Big Ten was always good. I mean, the Big Ten had incredible players even in that time, but just to watch Michigan rise to dominance was awesome.
And you mentioned how much Michigan means to you guys, and obviously it does to a lot of the former players too. And we see that with one of the Fab Five members, Juwan Howard, coming back to school. That kind of underscores just how important of a place this was to him as well.
Juwan Howard was the best, and we knew him. So all five guys were in a communications class that we had. By the way, it was a 9 a.m. class, which is pretty early for college kids. And all of them showed up to every class. That was amazing. They showed up to every class, and they sat in front of us. Was it at the, where was it?
Freeze building.
I think it was at the Freeze building. And so we're way up high and sitting in this huge lecture hall. And Jay and I we were making jokes the whole time. We didn't even think they knew us. We didn't even think they knew, but like they were right in front of us, and we were just having fun. And then one day I didn't show up to class. I was probably hungover. And Jay went down to get, I guess, the syllabus or the review sheet for the test. And he hears from behind him this big booming voice who says, hey, yo, twin, where was your brother this morning? And Jay looks around, turns around, and you can tell the rest of it.
And it was Juwan. And I was like, oh, he's sick. Thanks, man. He's like, oh, we love you guys. He was so nice. And then we walked across the diag together. Like, I'm like 5'8". He's, a tower.
6'10".
And they're already like stars on campus. Everyone loves them. And I saw a bunch of people who were trying to say hi to me. And I was like, I'm actually obviously busy here because I'm hanging with my buddy, Juwan Howard. I was a sophomore. He was a freshman.
So this is how great Juwan is. This will just tell you everything you need to know. So we studied for the test with him. Like he just was a really good guy. I mean, amazing dude, and exactly who he is now, but as a college kid. So 2 years ago, it's like 2 or 3 years ago, I'm at a Clippers game, and we knew some of the Clippers front office people, and so in between halftime, as the players were coming out, they let me and my family go down where the players were coming out of the tunnel and just kind of wave to them as they were coming out. My kids loved it. My daughters loved it. So they're playing the Heat, and Juwan is a coach there. And I hadn't seen Juwan. We have not seen him in years or been in contact with him. And we're walking across the floor to go back up to our seats. And this is like right before halftime, right as the half is about to start. His player meeting ends. he turns around and he sees me and we make eye contact. Jawan sees me and I look at him and he points to me and he points to my kids and he then says, he mouths the words to me, "Hey, yo, twin, where's your brother?" He remembered the joke from all that time ago in 1991. And I just was like, I love this guy so much. We love him. And then when we guest hosted Jim Rome's show, we asked if he would come on right as he took the coaching job. And he did, and he gave us an interview. He just was the nicest person ever. I just love that he's in the program now. Love what he's doing with the program. And there couldn't be a better person heading up that program than Jawan Howard.
You know, that's a really amazing story, but I would also imagine as comedians too, you have to appreciate his comedic timing on that one because he didn't miss
that's a call. Okay, that's a callback from, I want to say, like almost 30 years. It's like a 30-year-old callback he makes, perfectly timed. I loved it. Yeah, it was just,
wow.
It was great. And again, it shows the depth of this human being. He's just a thoughtful and awesome guy.
Oh, certainly. And you mentioned having class with all the Fab Five members. You saw other athletes on campus. That was when Desmond won his Heisman Trophy. With the amount of star power and iconic players that were there at the time, was there one person, maybe C-Web, that kind of had a larger-than-life aura? Was it multiple people, or did you kind of see them a little bit as peers because you did share those classes together?
Yeah, I mean, we saw them, I think, as peers, but I think probably the biggest, like the guys who rose above everyone else were Weber and Jalen, because Jalen had so much personality too. Like it just was there and it was out. And Desmond. I mean, Desmond was such a good guy. And then on top of that, he was the first Heisman Trophy winner that Michigan had in 40 years. You know, it was such a big deal. And he was that special. Like he was that guy who was so electric all the time that, like, you know, for us as fans of this program, already we're just enamored with the school and the team. But now you have a guy who's on the national stage. It was really, really exciting.
So you mentioned going to some basketball games. The one against Duke was a big one in your mind. And then also being there to see the catch. From a football perspective, was that probably the coolest moment that you guys had to witness in person, or is there another one that sticks out?
I mean, there was the catch, and then there was the pose. You know, when he struck the pose against Ohio State at home, like those two moments were. I'd go back and listen to Keith Jackson call him returning that punt, because there's a point where like no one's gonna catch him, no one has the angle from him, and Keith Jackson is just like goodbye, and it's like the favorite thing in the world.
Well, he says he makes a move, and then he goes, "Oh my," and then he goes, "One man, goodbye," and then he gets into the end zone, and he's like, "Hello, Heisman," and he does the pose, and it was just that was such a great moment because I think what people forget. And this is what's so interesting, and we have been through the ringer, certainly, and maybe this is your transition into what we're going through right now, certainly with football. But, you know, those 1990s Ohio State teams were good. They were really, really good. They had great athletes. They were finishing 9-2. They were finishing, you know, 8-3, 9-2. Like they were 10-1. Like they were really, really good teams filled with unbelievable athletes in a tradition that was great. They didn't really drop off. Michigan just got the best of them and beat them in those games. And, you know, that we were lucky at that time to experience something like that. I mean, that wasn't even what it was in the 70s. In the 70s, they split those games. In the 90s, Michigan dominated. And so it feels like such a distant memory. I think what people have to realize is certainly in the 2000s is that, you know, Michigan tried two different coaching styles that didn't work, and that set the program back some. So you have to take, you know, we liked Rich Rod, but his style just didn't work in the Big Ten, and he didn't get the right defensive coordinator to help, you know, at least make his offense that much more powerful and give Michigan a chance to win. And we like Brady Hoke. I mean, he's the last person to beat Ohio State, but, you know, again. Like, he just wasn't organized enough as a head coach to get them there. And as a result, they lost a lot. And so it takes a while to, to build back up and get there. So obviously in the early aughts with Lloyd Carr there, a lot of those games were close. I mean, you think about the game when they were 1-2 and questionable Sean Crable tackle as Troy Smith is going out of bounds. That game was almost a Michigan win. And then you think about Brady Hoke. I mean, he won, and then they also almost won with Devin Gardner. They just called the same play twice. So they are a lot closer than one win in 15 years would suggest. They're just on the other end. I would say it flipped from what the 90s was, because the 90s, those weren't bad Ohio State teams. They're just quarterbacks made like one mistake in a key moment in the game, or something happened. And, we just have to remember that when I sometimes we forget it because we're so frustrated by, the losing, but we lived through in the 90s when we were there, Michigan was winning that game. So we felt lucky about that.
It does seem to define how things have gone over the last decade, like you said, because Brady Hoke he obviously beat OSU once. He came close another time. Jim has been right there on multiple occasions with the JT being short instance.
Yep.
Like, there's one final hump that they really can't get over, and Ohio State keeps reloading. So maybe there needs to be a year like 2020 where it's really crazy, everything's in flux for the barometer to maybe bounce in the other direction.
You never know. I really think it relies on a quarterback that can carry you through. And you think about the quarterback play that Ohio State's had in the last decade or so, and it's just been unbelievable. It's been off the charts. I would say Ohio State, no team, even when you look at Alabama has been good for a long time and amazing and elite, but not as long as Ohio State. Ohio State has been the best team in college football overall, certainly longer than Clemson, longer than Auburn, longer than Alabama. They've had an unbelievable run, and they just happen to be in our division. So it's a bummer. But like you said, and Jay said, let's say 3 of those 5 crazy plays go our way. Let's say we make the 2-point conversion with Devin Gardner, which it totally could have happened. Let's say the spot is awarded correctly and we stop them on 4th down and we win that game there. And then maybe one more game. So suddenly you're not 1-15, maybe you're 5-10. You know what I mean? It's or you're 6-10, and it's a lot more of a balanced thing, and that just changes everything. So you have to look back on that perspective and look at it that way. But I do think this is, like you said, the type of year where playing at Ohio State with not maximum fans might be the type of thing. And you never know. A guy like Joe Milton, his ceiling is so high, you never know what he can do. He can just have the game of his life, and that might be what it takes. I'm also excited for the future, and a kid like J.J. McCarthy coming in, and in a couple of years, this might be the guy to take us where we need to go.
There's a lot of talent in that quarterback room, like you suggested. Joe Milton has one of the strongest arms. Everybody who's around him, they keep saying he might be the strongest they've ever seen. There was a quote yesterday from a Michigan wide receiver that said, when Joe Milton's in the game and he throws it, just keep running, because there's absolutely no chance that the ball is going to come up short.
Which is brilliant. And then you think to yourself, who have they now recruited, and who are the guys that are coming in? Guys like Roman Wilson and AJ Henny who are coming in this year, and Xavier Worthy coming in next year. These are burners who can tear the top off of the defense. And then you got great slot guys like Giles Jackson and Mikey Sainristil and Ronnie Bell. These are guys that if you extend the defense with deep passes and the threat of being able to go along with burners on the side that people have to keep up with. I mean, you may have one Roman Wilson on your team, but suddenly Xavier Worthy and Roman Wilson, that is I don't know if they have cornerbacks that can. And if he's going to throw it 70 yards, just be there. You never know. I think this team could be extraordinarily exciting, and this might be the way to break through, we were kind of talking about before.
Yeah, but you also have to have plays where if the play breaks down, you got to have the type of quarterback who can make something happen, like Joe Milton, have guys bounce off him. I mean, I think of Vince Young, and I think about that game against USC and the game against Michigan at the Rose Bowl, both of them. Both those other teams, Michigan played a pretty good game, and you know, so did USC. And Vince Young, just when the time came, guys bounced off him and he just got to the first down and got to the end zone. And we haven't had a guy like that. I mean, I even think about the game last year. This should give us confidence. You think about the first half of the Michigan game last year, Josh Gaddis's offense was dominating Ohio State's defense. You think about the end around reverse, Giles Jackson took it all the way to the house. He's on your team still. You think about, you know, that deep chunk pass play to Eubanks, you know, he's still on your team. You think about so many of the plays, and then you think about, you know, unfortunately, Shea Patterson, with no pressure on him, drops, fumbles, shotgun snap. A shotgun snap. You cannot fumble a shotgun snap in that game. Fumbles it inside the red zone while we're making another run towards the end zone and while we're, you know, on a long drive. And that just killed the momentum. Like, jumping off sides when you stop them on fourth down is a turnover. That's a turnover. The next play, they get a touchdown. Like, those two moments in that game, for me, turned the entire game. And even with that, in the third quarter, we still came back and we were within like 8 points or 9 points of the, like, that should give Michigan fans hope. Like, if they can eliminate one or two of those plays, like Michigan scores a touchdown there and Michigan, you know, forces them to give the ball up and then controls the ball and keeps them off the field a little bit more. You know, the offense was humming. They couldn't figure it out. And same with the John O'Korn year. You know, Michigan came out and the offense dominated Ohio State's defense. It wasn't like they shut us down. It was more about our defense not being able to stop them. But I think, you know, I think in this era, Michigan's never going to beat Ohio State 28-0 or you know, 27-14 or even 20-14 or 14-7. That's never going to happen again. Michigan's going to have to beat them. You know, it's almost like an Iowa basketball game where you win like 102-92. Like, we're going to have to give up like 7 touchdowns, you know, or 6 touchdowns and win and get the one stop you need in the game and win 45-42. That's what I think.
And hopefully Josh Gaddis's offense allows Michigan to do that. But like you said, such an important piece is the quarterback development. Now, with the new starter under center this year, do you think that's the biggest challenge Michigan has to overcome, or is it replacing 4 new starters on the offensive line, or even looking into the secondary? Josh Metellus is gone, Lavert Hill is gone, Ambry Thomas opted out. Which position group do you think is the most crucial for Michigan's success this year?
These are great questions. I definitely think I would not worry about the offensive line, because I think Jalen Mayfield opting back in. Ryan Hayes has starts under his belt. Stuber is going to start on the inside. And he literally was vying with Jalen Mayfield, who everyone was talking about being a first-round pick, and he may still be a first-round pick. And until his knee injury, he was neck and neck with him. So you've got 2 guys on a very high level on that right side of the line. I am ecstatic about young kids like Carson Farnhart, and you know, I still even think Chuck Filiaga is going to make some noise. Zach Zincher as a freshman is unbelievable. You know, Trente Jones is supposed to be good, and Trevor Keegan and Nolan Rumler. You have so many guys who can step in, and Andrew Bastardas, they're saying, as center is doing well. Zach Carpenter is another guy. So, I mean, we have so many guys that on the offensive line, and Ed Warner, guys who've been in the system for a couple of years. So they know it. I think and with Mayfield and Hayes, their pass blocking is going to be great. I also think we have the best running back room that we've ever had since we've been there. You got home run threats with Chris Evans and Blake Corum. You have guys who can just help your line, you know, help move the ball so that less is on Joe Milton's shoulders in terms of Charbonnet. I think Charbonnet he's going to take a leap forward this year. He was hurt a lot last year. So if he takes a leap forward, Haskins can take some of that load off of Charbonnet so you keep him fresh. He's awesome. I just love this. I love our running back room. So I'm not so worried about the line, not so worried about, I think pressure can be taken off Milton as far as that goes. The secondary is the only thing that is like a question mark at some level, but I do like them talking about the possibility of moving Dax Hill potentially to be a cover guy, because he was recruited as a corner to Ohio State. I really think Dax, if you got Dax Hill and Vince Gray and, maybe one of these younger guys or a DJ Turner, potentially Jamon Green, who's supposed to be playing pretty well, Jalen Perry, you have some guys who can sort of in the 2 deep, and that would just depends on who as a safety can step in. And I'm telling you, I'm excited about these young dudes like Makari Page and RJ Moten, these guys, and Jordan Morant. So yes, I'd be sad about moving Dax Hill, but you put your best guys out in cover and then you see what happens. The rest of our defense, I think, is going to be so stout. I'm so excited about our linebackers. I'm so excited about our front guys, especially our edge rushers. This team is going to be they're fun. I think they have a lot of potential.
Yeah, I think the key is certainly in the opening game, running the football. I think that takes the pressure off of Joe Milton. I think we hopefully don't ask Joe Milton to have too many 3rd and long situations. I hope, I think we say, let's give him a chance to take his shots on 2nd and short in the first game. And otherwise, like bubble screens to these fast dudes, end arounds. I mean, let's not forget that like Giles Jackson is a burner, right? And Roman Wilson, who knows? Like if you get the running game going and you have movement and guys, motion behind, and you can run counters and you can run, sweeps with these burners, like those plays act like passes and those plays divide up and confuse defenses. We can have a lot of variation in our offensive attack in the first couple games just through the running game, and we can ease Joe Milton into it. So again, I'm not worried about that. I think a guy like Andre Seldon is a guy who like thrives on everyone saying he can't do it. You can't do it. You're 5'8", man. You can't do it. And I think he's the kind of guy who, even though they're saying Jamon Green and DJ Turner are there, I'm not kidding you when I say if they keep Dax Hill at safety, I think there is a real possibility that by middle of the season, Andre Seldon is your other starting corner along with Vincent Gray.
That's a really good point. And having a lot of that positional flexibility in the secondary, that can be key with so many young guys. But I've got to say, I'm wildly impressed with the knowledge that you guys have of the depth chart, because I think you might have listed every player that's come to Michigan in the last 2 years on both sides of the ball. So if the coaches know the players as well as you guys do, we're in good shape this year.
Thank you. Well, it's a passion of ours. We listen to, we'll listen to, just as I'm walking around LA, it's such a comfort to listen to like Sam Webb and Ira Weintraub, like on the WTKA, and listen to they chop it up into podcast form. I love listening to their recruiting roundups. We go on the Michigan Insider. We're all over. Read Sports Illustrated, the SI stuff. We're on all of it. And it's cool to kind of hear who we're recruiting and who we're up on and the new guys coming in. It's just, to me, it's like a welcome and distraction from all the other stuff.
Also, I think we know Harbaugh, and, we understand what he's trying to build, as comedians and as people who are trying to build our own careers. Sometimes the situations outside of your control, like, force you to not pull off the perfect season or the perfect moment. We've had how many times has Randy and I been lucky enough to sell a pilot of a TV show that we think should go, and then because of reasons that are beyond our control, the show doesn't go. And some people outside of our world would say, well, that's a loss. But we say, no, we got 1 foot closer to this success. Now, the next time we do it, we're going to get even closer. And so I think, just knowing Harbaugh a little bit, despite what people may think, who are negative or who are disappointed or think we should be further along, like this program, think about where it was when he picked it up at 2015 and think about where we are now. You got to look at the whole package. Who are we recruiting? What are we doing? What is, where are certain like position groups moving? Do we not only now have great starters and then amazing guys right behind them in case any of them get hurt? I mean, there was a time I can remember with our offensive line, like even 4 years ago, where you're like, if this guy goes down, we're in trouble. And so I don't feel that way anymore about the offensive line. And I think the fact that he's doing that at every position means, and this is all you can ask, is that can you put us in a position to win every single game? That's all you can ask Harbaugh, because he can't go on the field and execute for the kids. He can't do that. So can he put the kids in a position to win the game? And that's the question. And when I say the game, I mean Ohio State, because they've proven they can beat everyone else.
Yeah, and that really does seem it's like one of the defining qualities of Harbaugh's tenure so far is that record against Ohio State. But maybe he can do a little bit of work to shift the narrative this year. And I'll get you guys out of here on this one, but with how strange of a year it has been, what would be the most fitting 2020 type of ending to Michigan's season this year?
What would be incredible is if they really do put it all together and they understand so I think Michigan does a really good job of evaluating talent. There are a lot of times, especially in recruiting, pick a guy that may be under the radar, and then I look at a guy like Nakai Hill-Green, who is was not as highly touted as even some of their other linebackers that are coming in. And this guy is impressing everybody. This guy may be the next great. I even think of like Devin Bush. Remember when we got Devin Bush, everybody was like, hey, he's 5'11", he's undersized, what's he going to be? And then all of a sudden, he's the greatest linebacker that we've ever had in Michigan. They're really good at that. So can they use that same lens on the team itself and say, okay, let's evaluate this team. What do we do really well? Let's exploit that, and let's use that moving forward. And I think if you beat Minnesota in that first game, there's going to be a lot of confidence. And I do think we have Penn State and we've got Wisconsin at home. I think I would love to see this team finish the regular season undefeated. And I don't think it's too far to ask that. I think that we need to start saying that as a possibility out there, because if you put it out there, I think people will start to believe it. But I do think like an 8-1 or a 9-0 would be the most unbelievable end to this crazy year, because when you think about it, almost every team has had to shut down their practice because of COVID problems, except Michigan. Michigan has gone all the way through. So they've done everything right in terms of handling this pandemic. So I want that to then be rewarded in the way the team plays. That somehow, some way, that continuity, that closeness, the way they've grown through these practices and stuff, I want to see that play itself out and be kind of like what we were talking about before. Be the difference in those one or two plays in a game that can turn the tide and shift it. So, yeah, you got to face a guy like Rashad Bateman, but he hasn't been there, and so maybe his lack of practice might not make him as sharp as he would be. And so the sharpness that we have, having been there, and that consistency might be the edge that we need to win that game. So that to me would be a really fitting end, that we get rewarded for doing it right through this whole time.
So I would say, I would love, this is my hope and wish for this team. I would love for our football team to perform like our basketball team has performed in recent years. And that is to say, outperforming their star ratings and outperforming their expectations, meaning that a guy or two, I want to see that a guy or two that we're not expecting to step up and take over become the guy that we never could have imagined. That happened a lot in basketball. You think about guys like Tim Hardaway. You think about guys even like Trey Burke. I mean, we had high expectations for Trey Burke. I don't think anyone thought he was going to be player of the year. It was different with C-Webb and those guys. C-Webb, you were like, all right, we got a candidate here. But like Trey Burke, think about Karis LeVert. You think about just guys who came in who we didn't necessarily expect would elevate this team to such a high level and take them to the Final Four. So what is the Final Four for football? Obviously, we didn't win any national championships, but we got to the playoff. And I think in this year already, we're seeing teams that were supposed to be in the playoff. Oklahoma, you're seeing other teams, Texas, you're seeing teams that, were rated higher than Michigan coming into the season because of, like Randy said, teams not having continuity in practices and starting and stopping. You're just seeing the cracks in some of these teams. It's not a normal season. I would love to see Michigan say, look, we've handled our business. We're coming in prepared. And then you want to see a guy like Joe Milton, or maybe it's Zach Charbonnet, or maybe it's Chris Hinton up the middle, or somebody to step up to a level that we can't even predict that they can step up to help define the character of this team and push them over the top.
I think if you two are correct in how the season unfolds, the Michigan fan base will be very happy with the results that they have. So I want to thank you guys.
So. Oh, I was going to say, sure, that's a good point. I hope so. And by the way, if we go down to Minnesota and lose that first game, the season's not over either. You can come back and, so I don't want to put too much on that. But anyway, I just love the way we've handled it, and I'm excited about this season. Thank you so much for having us on.
I want to thank you guys for doing this. And for everyone watching, you can follow the Sklar brothers on Twitter at Sklar, Sklar brothers.
Yeah, thanks so much. And by the way, we do a weekly sports podcast if you want to check that out too. It's called View from the Cheap Seats. It drops every Friday. But I think your fans would probably do that too.
Views from the Cheap Seats, a callback to your 2004 show.
That's
right. It's our take on the world of sports.
Love it. I'm sure it's great stuff, guys. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.